Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 891, Sunday, September 8th, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, don't forget today to get your vote in the comments section of today's video for Dumbass of the Week. Dumbass of the Week. Boy, it was a close competition last week, and don't know how close it's going to be this week, but there's certainly a lot of good candidates, a lot of dumbasses. A lot of dumbass activities and comments going around, so I'm sure that that'll be fun as it normally is. But yeah, last week was really close, so we'll keep watching. And if I remember last week, I said nobody can beat Biden, but as it turns out, Comey beat Biden. And anyway, I was wrong about that, but it was a very close competition. I think Comey won that by 2 votes. So I'll be looking forward to this week's Dumbass of the Week to see who that's going to be, who's going to have that high honor. That high honor here on TowerGate. Okay, so the first story we're going to get into today, because we have some Spygate stuff to talk about today, quite a bit of Spygate stuff. In fact, mostly Spygate stuff today, not much political stuff. So that's good for all of us who really want to talk about the Spygate story, which is always my primary objective. On days when I just don't have much to say about it, means there's just not much happening. So then I resort to my fallback position, which is political issues. Which I'm really not into the political stuff that much, to be honest with you. I'm totally focused on the Spygate story, and that's why I do these videos. So I'm always happy on a day like today when we actually have some very good and new information that we can talk about regarding Spygate. So this first story, first story is about this Oceanero situation that's been playing itself out in Italy. Now, this is a story, for those of you who follow the story, you know what I'm talking about. Mr. Oceanero is an Italian businessman who has a company, and he has 2 locations inside the United States for his businesses. So that's kind of the backstory here, is how this Italian businessman got himself caught up and sucked up into the Trump coup, because Obama and the Right Reverend Clinton and John Brennan were coordinating with the Italian PM to get the Italians to assist in the Trump coup. And Mr. Oceanero got sucked into this because he owns a couple of companies, and 2 of them located inside the U.S., and I assume maybe he has some appreciation for Trump, or is a Trump supporter, or maybe he's anti-EU. I'm not exactly why they targeted him. I would assume it would have something to do with the fact that he must have been a Trump supporter or something, because in order to carry out the plot, they needed to be able to tie him to Trump. So let me give you just a little more background, and then we'll spread through the details a little bit. It's such a complex story that it would take an hour to explain it. So you can go over to the Gateway Pundit, and you can find kind of the backstory there, or you can just Google Italy Oceanero, and the name would be spelled O-C-C-H-I-O-N-E-R-O. That's O-C-C-H-I-O-N-E-R-O. Just type in Oceanero, Italy, Spygate, or something like that, and you will find a bunch of stories detailing this. And it's a very complex thing, because there's 2 or 3 different things going on within it. Okay, so it's a domestic issue in Italy. It relates to another related spy issue about a female CIA agent who was thrown under the bus by Brennan and the Obama administration. She had gotten herself involved in an illegal kidnapping, essentially, of a citizen of a foreign Middle Eastern country, and that all got washed up and exposed, and she was caught up in that, and Obama and Brennan threw her under the bus. Fortunately, since Trump's become president, he has gotten her off the hook, and she's, I believe, free now, out of jail. So that's a whole other part of the story. But I want to focus mostly on this part of the story that we've touched on a few times over the past couple months. Now, I'm surprised that this story has never really gotten traction in the U.S., because it's a major front page story in Italy, and the Papagalopoulos tweet about it quite a bit. And I have talked about it here on TowerGate a few times, but it's just never really gotten too much traction here in the U.S. Kind of like the Ukrainian story, which has never really gotten much traction here in the U.S. But now this story is getting traction in the U.S., and you're going to start hearing about it. You'll probably start hearing Hannity talk about it at some point. because now Jay Sekulow has gotten involved. The president's lawyer has now gotten involved in the Oceanero conspiracy story. So here's just a brief background of an excerpt from the article. So Oceanero is the man who exposed and is exposing Italy's plot in the Trump coup. Oceanero claims that Obama, Brennan, and the Rotten Reverend Clinton were complicit in a plot where Italian intelligence officials were to plant classified emails from the Rotten Reverend Clinton onto servers of Mr. Oceanero's businesses, onto his server networks and his businesses, two of his companies here inside the United States. Then Italy, once planting the Rotten Reverend Clinton's classified emails on his servers in the two companies here in the U.S., Italy's intelligence services would then alert the FBI, where the FBI would then go in and investigate, and they would find that they would raid these two business locations of Mr. Oceanero in the U.S. and find the classified emails allegedly stolen from the Rotten Reverend Clinton on his server. And all that would be an effort to link Oceanero to Trump, and this would all be done in order to force Trump to resign. So this was the plot, was to be able to force Trump into resigning because he was going to be tied to this Italian businessman, Mr. Oceanero, once the FBI found the classified emails from the Rotten Reverend Clinton on his servers, and then they were going to tie Oceanero to Trump. And that was all based on a plot cooked up by Obama, along with the Italian PM, Matteo Renzi, R-E-N-Z-I. And so this is the major part of the plot. Like I said, there's more to it, but this is the major part of the plot. So now charges have been filed against Mr. Oceanero, he and his sister, which I assume are the owners of these companies. And so now that the charges have been filed and the legal case is moving forward, all of this information is now coming out in discovery. Mr. Oceanero and his sister are now, in their deposition to the court, are now exposing all of these things. Mr. Oceanero had previously written a letter to a couple heads of congressional committees in the U.S. as well as the Department of Justice, and he had not really heard any response from any of them. But now, as this case has now made its way into the courts and it's being plastered all over the front pages of the major papers in Italy, Jay Sekulow has now come into this information, and now he is investigating this as well and is going to be doing FOIA requests from the intelligence community and the FBI and the State Department to get documents pertaining to this, because as we can see here, it appears that Mr. Oceanero has plenty of evidence to prove that these Italian intelligence officials were involved in this plot. And so we know that when the new Italian PM came in, he canned 3 or 4 of the top intelligence officials in Italy. And a lot of people thought it had to do with the MIFSD situation, and it may have something to do with the MIFSD situation, because that's also likely originated, at least the contacts for the intelligence people likely originated in Italy. But it may also have to do with the Oceanero case. It could be one, it could be the other, it could be both, because it appears that Italian intelligence is deeply involved in these coup plots, because Obama had a very good relationship with Renzi. They were very close, and they liked each other a lot, and Obama had a special dinner at one point toward the end of his administration, and of course one of his guests of honor was Matteo Renzi. So this is kind of the basic backstory to this plot, and you can read again a little bit more on this in the Gateway Pundit story that appeared on their website on Saturday. But if you just Google Oceanero, Italy, Spygate, you will find many stories and a lot more involved discussion in that. I think Zero Hedge did a really good story on this about a month or two ago. So there's probably quite a few sort of archive stories on this from weeks and months ago. But it looks like this story is now going to finally get some traction here in the U.S. because obviously Jay Sekulow is now involved. The ACLJ is now involved. They're going to be suing for documents from the intel community, the State Department, the FBI, to get any documents that they have showing what they may have been involved in. But this case is going forward in Italy. The information is coming out through the legal process. And it's very likely that this is going to blow up and become an even bigger story. Certainly it's already it's the major story in Italy. The Spygate issue in general is a major story in Italy. It has been for over a year now, both because of Mifsud and because of the Oceanero angles. Both of these angles make this very much a feature prominent story in Italy. And but it's, for whatever reason, it's never really got traction here in the U.S. But now that Jay Sekulow is investigating this as another element of the many elements that were part of the coup plot, I think we're now going to learn something here. And it's kind of funny, you know, I remember now an interview that Bill Barr did with one of the ABC or NBC or CBS, one of those networks, one of the big three. He did an interview about 6 or 8 weeks ago, and in that interview, he was asked about, you know, the Spygate investigation in Durham and what he's doing and looking into and all that. And he said something that I thought was very interesting. He said, you know, he said, when you look at these, he said, I'm very familiar with these types of investigations. I worked for the CIA. When I first went to work for government, it was for the CIA, working in the Department of Justice over the years. I know a lot about these sorts of things. And he said, you know, the thing about the Spygate thing that he's investigating, he said, you know, we learned that they had, you know, this spy here, and they had Steele, and they had, you know, a couple of these things going on. And Barr said, you know, it's my experience over the years that, you know, when the government launches, FBI or whatever launches a counterintelligence operation, it's not just a couple people here, or not like a dossier here and a guy here and a guy there. He said normally these counterintelligence operations involve dozens and dozens of operatives and a lot of activity, a lot of things going on, not just a few little things. And he says, so far, looking into Spygate, we just know a few of little things with Christopher Steele, the dossier, the foreign spy or two over in London. That's what we know. But he said, I can tell you from my years of experience, this would not represent the total picture of all the things that must have been going on. There had to be a lot more going on, because these counterintelligence operations don't involve just a few little things here and there. He said they are full-scale operations which involve large numbers of people and lots of activities going on. And so this is kind of... So when you take what Barr said in that interview and then you look at that and put it in the context of everything that we know that happened here in the United States, that went on in London, that was going on in Ukraine, we know about what was going on in Italy, we know about Australia. I think that's why Barr and Durham have been spending so much time overseas, because Barr has just come back from England. I think it's his third trip there now. I'm not sure if he's been to Italy or the UK, but we know that William Barr has been to the UK about 3 or 4 times over the past couple months himself, personally. We know that Durham has practically been, all summer long, has been all over Europe. That's where he's been. He's in Europe all over, and he's probably going to find his way to Australia as well. So they're really looking at the foreign operations. I think they pretty much got a handle on a lot of the things that happened here in the U.S., because Horowitz is going through a lot of that. Plus, there was already a lot of things with congressional investigations and things like that. I think they have a pretty good handle on a lot of the things that were going on here inside the U.S. With the FBI here domestically. But you can see that Barr and Durham are putting a lot of emphasis and spending a lot of time overseas investigating Spygate. So I think that this is what Barr was talking about a month and a half ago in that interview. When he said it, you know, I got it, but now I really get it. So these operations going on, and there's probably other things that we don't even know about yet, that we don't even know about. We only learned about the things that either were successful or were unsuccessful, but were exposed. We don't know about the things that they tried to roll out that didn't work, or the things that they had planned that never got off the off the blocks or what have you. So there was a lot, just like William Barr says, there was a lot going on here, a lot more than has even been revealed at this point, and that's why they're spending so much time overseas trying to sort this all out. But definitely take a look at this Oceanera story. I think it's fascinating, and now that Jay Sekulow has gotten involved, I think we're going to finally see it become a big story here in the U.S. And it's a fascinating story, and again, there's two other parts. This is just one part of it. There's two other parts of it. They're also kind of entangled into it as well. So we'll continue to follow this, and hopefully we'll find out more over the next couple of weeks. We'll start to hear about some of these things as Jay Sekulow will most likely be talking about it on his radio show for the ACLJ. Assume he'll be talking about it with Hannity, and it'll maybe find its way. Gateway Pundit's been covering this story for all summer long. So we'll just keep our eye peeled. We'll keep following this story. I think there's definitely there's definitely smoke here, and we can assume there's some fire. And of course, the legal case is playing itself out right now in Italy. So at some point, that's going to come to fruition as well. Now, like I said, I could spend 2 hours talking about this story. It's fascinating. But we have other breaking Spygate news, important Spygate news to talk about today, so let's move on. So, in another story today, again, from the Gateway Pundit, we have more bad news for the coup plotters and Uncle Bob the executioner. We have a new string of tweets by Monsieur America. And these tweets prove that Felix Sater was in fact an agent of the CIA and the deep state. Sater's rabbi tweeted out a 100-tweet thread which shows video of Sater being given an award by the CIA in a private ceremony. Sater was mentioned over 100 times in the Mueller report. Sater also has connections to the Clintons, Loretta Lynch, and Andrew Weissman. Sater's code name was Quarterback. Sater also has been a source to many left-wing news organizations such as CNN and ABC. Sater is believed to have been Source E in the dossier, and the one who was responsible for the story that Trump paid Russian hookers in Moscow to do a golden showers routine on a bed where the Obamas had slept when they were in that same hotel. So this is an interesting story. Of course, we have exposed Felix Sater multiple times on this channel. For the very first time that we heard about Sater, I think Paul Sperry very early on, or I think it was Sperry, either him or Chuck Ross, one of the two. The first time his name popped up, they did the background on him, and it was pretty obvious that he was working for the government, and it's not too hard to tell because he was part of a Russian mob that was involved in illegal activity inside the United States. They were able to turn him, and the person who negotiated the deal to turn Sater, to get him to turn in all his corrupt friends and to become an informant, was Andrew Wiseass. That's right, Andrew Wiseass. And his boss, Loretta Lynch. She's the one who approved it. So Wiseass set up this deal with Sater to turn him, basically to get him to turn in all his friends and become an informant. And of course Loretta Lynch signed off on that. So he became an informant back then, and this was many years ago, over 20 years ago. And since then he has been an intelligence source for the FBI, likely has intelligence connections, obviously getting an award from the CIA shows that he not only is an FBI informant, but he also has ties as some sort of an asset for the CIA. And of course, once we saw that his links here in the U.S. were to people like the Clintons, liberal news networks, certain journalists, Rachel Maddow, people like that, Brian Ross of ABC News. He was likely the source that spoke to Brian Ross when Ross spoke to Papadopoulos. Of course, it was Brian Ross who told Papadopoulos he had a FISA on him. So Felix Sater was basically a Russian mobster who got caught involved in all these crimes. They were able to turn him. Weissman was the one who got him to become an informant. Loretta Lynch was Weissman's boss. She signed off on it, and since that day, Sater has been an informant for the FBI, and also, as we can now learn from this video where he's getting an award at a private ceremony, he's also been working for the intelligence community. And he is, of course, believed to be source E in the dossier, and the person who made up the phony story, the PP-Gate story regarding Trump in the Moscow Ritz Hotel, and you know the whole story there. So, more bad news as more evidence is coming out that this is true. Sater has been exposed. Now, if you remember, the bug-eyed fool, the pencil neck Adam Schiff for brains, was going to have Sater come and testify until someone whispered in his ear and said, "No, you really don't want Sater. No, you don't want Sater." You know, you don't want Sater. So I imagine the intelligence community probably got to him, or the FBI, and said, "No, you don't want to bring Sater in. He's one of our people. You don't want him testifying in front of Congress." Shh. So Schiff stopped talking about it and never brought it up again. So there you go. Let's get to the next story. Paul Sperry. Okay, this is also a very complex story. You're going to have to go to Paul Sperry and read the story for yourself, because this one gets really involved. And this goes back to 9/11. And, of course, back in the day when I was a hardcore 9/11 researcher, after that event happened, I started researching 9/11 in 2003. And spent about 3 or 4 years just really dialed into the 9/11 story, ever before I did a YouTube video, and tried to understand that deep state plot. And so a lot of the things about Robert Mueller, because he was the FBI director at the time, I learned a lot of things about Robert Mueller, particularly his involvement in getting his highest #1 intelligence official, counterintelligence official, Thomas O'Neill, and what happened to him. Of course, you know, he was killed in the World Trade Center attack on his first day on the job. He was on the exact floor where the first plane hit the South Tower, and he was placed there by the FBI because he had spent the last year solid sending frantic reports to the highest levels of the FBI, and he was high level himself, trying to warn them about all the things he was learning about various foreign intelligence agencies and terrorists, and these efforts to learn to fly airplanes, the idea they were going to fly them. He had all this information. He had a lot of things about the plot. He was trying to feed this, and they just simply would not. It would get to a certain level, and they would kill it, and the information would go nowhere. He finally got so furious, he decided to leave the FBI, and he found himself going to work for a private firm which had connections to Mueller and other former FBI people. They got him a gig with this company, and they set up an office for him right there at the World Trade Center. And the very first day on the job, he was in one of the very floors where the plane actually hit. He was on that floor where basically the plane was a direct hit on the office he was in on his first day on the job, and that silenced him. That took care of Mr. O'Neill. But there's a lot more about Uncle Bob the Executioner and his role in 9/11. A lot to talk about there, so you may want to dig into that on your own. But here's just a little bit from Paul Sperry's story today, which you may want to go take a look at. And it's probably posted on themarketswork.com. You can probably find it on realclearinvestigations.com, or just Google Paul Sperry, or just go to his Twitter. Okay, so Paul Sperry, we have a new story detailing how Uncle Bob the Executioner helped cover up Saudi Arabia's role in 9/11. A survivor of the 9/11 attack, who was pulled from the rubble of the World Trade Center, is now suing Saudi Arabia. This survivor, Sharon Promoli, claims in his lawsuit that Mueller was the master of the cover-up of the Saudis' role in 9/11 during the W. Bush administration. He says that Mueller blocked any investigations into the Saudis' involvement. He says multiple FBI agents have now come forward and given depositions that back up Promoli's claims. Of course, we know Judicial Watch has also obtained documents that show a clear cover-up by the Bush administration and FBI Director Mueller at that time over the Saudi involvement in 9/11. Everyone knows that the Saudis, and quite honestly, even though Sperry doesn't mention it and probably won't, mention it. It wasn't just the Saudis, it was the Saudi and Israeli Mossad working together. It was Saudis and Israeli Mossad working together that were very key players in that plot. Of course, if many of you follow the story, you know about the dancing Israelis. You probably know about the place down in Florida where some of these guys were staying, were owned, was essentially they were staying at a place or leasing a place that's owned by Israeli intelligence, and they were being watched constantly. We know the role of Saudi intelligence and Saudi royals involved with Mossad in this. And again, it gets very, very deep. You have to dig. This is something that requires some of your own personal research. It's just so much there. Like I said, I spent 4, maybe 5 years just studying this and digging into 9/11, and a lot of roads lead back to Saudi Arabia and Israeli Mossad and 9/11. So this is all coming forward now, and because of this lawsuit, and there are numerous, including one of the key FBI agents just one step below Mueller, who was actually the guy briefing Mueller on a lot of things, and he's got first-hand, detailed, day-by-day conversation with Mueller, including written notes of all the activities Mueller was a part of to cover up the Saudi role in 9/11. And of course, we know on the morning of 9/11, the bin Laden family was here meeting with George Herbert Walker Bush when the attack went down. All the skies were closed to air traffic, but the Saudis, the bin Laden family, was allowed to board a plane, go to various airports and pick up other members of the bin Laden family who were scattered across the United States, and they were allowed to escape. We know that the dancing Israelis were also held for a couple of weeks, and then they were released and allowed to go back to Israel, where they went onto an Israeli TV show and talked about how they were sent there to cover the event. And you know, all you have to do is Google dancing Israelis. Dancing Israelis, and you can read all about that as well. Joe Biden has told a group of idiots at a New Hampshire rally that he will end fossil fuels. I think he said by 2050 or something, which that's not going to happen. And of course, these idiot leftists clap like a bunch of seals at the idea. It's hard to believe that there are so many people so ignorant to believe that we are going to be off of fossil fuels by 2050. And even though it sounds like it's a long way down the road, 30 years down the road, it's really not that far down the road when you think about the time it would take to create a new energy sector, create the infrastructure. I don't even know what it would be. I mean, I don't see being off of fossil fuels until, if they discovered something tomorrow, it would take 50 years to implement it, just to build the infrastructure and to try to figure out how to implement it, get rid of the old and bring in the new without destroying economies all over the world. If we were to follow the ideas of the leftists running for president in a Demo-Commie party, and if we were to actually enact the very things that they are all campaigning on right now, and we were to do all the things they want to do right now, in the very first winter, this winter, let's just say we enacted everything they wanted today. During the course of this winter across the United States, we would lose half of the population would die due to exposure for having lack of energy. This is how crazy these people are. They're suicidal. They're absolutely suicidal. It's a suicidal energy policy that they're trying to sell. Now, the clapping seals, the idiots, unfortunately, never think for themselves or research any of this to try to understand exactly what they're talking about. Just saying I want to get rid of fossil fuels, maybe it sounds good to a bunch of these nuts, but it simply is not possible. Not anytime soon. So anyway, this just shows you that Biden's willing to say anything. If he believes this is true, then he's too dumb to be president. And if he doesn't believe this is true, it just proves that he's willing to lie and say anything to become president. And that's not going to happen. I don't even think he's going to be the nominee. Well, we have Kamala Harris getting caught again. This time she gets caught. There was a supporter at a appearance that she was at yesterday, and this supporter called Trump mentally retarded. while he was asking a question or making a comment. Of course, at the time, Harris laughed at the comment and said, well said, and laughed at it. When she was asked later about it, of course, she began to walk it back, saying she would never condone anyone using that word in any way, shape, or form. And, of course, that is how she first tried to walk it back. But then that was with one reporter who asked her about it. Then another reporter asked her about it later. And by then, she had already learned that now it was on Twitter and everyone was watching it, watching this man call Trump mentally retarded, watching her go, ha, 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 and laugh and say, well said, well said. So she knew at that point, uh-oh, it's actually on Twitter. There's actually a video of it. So she had to then try to walk it back even farther by saying that she never heard or processed what this person said. But that's a lie too, because if you go back and watch the video, in the comment that he made, there's really nothing funny. And there's really nothing that he said that would justify a laugh and a comment from her saying, well said. Because the whole point he was making is that Trump's mentally retarded. So she has not explained what she was laughing about, nor has she explained what she was referring to when she was saying back to him, well said, well said. She was, the only thing that she could possibly have been responding to was the fact that he called Trump mentally retarded. And she had no problem with it. She laughed heartily and, of course, congratulated him essentially for saying so. Kamala Harris busted again. She's not going anywhere, I can assure you that. The best that she can hope for right now is that maybe she's not running for president anymore. She's running for VP. VP. She's hoping to be a Veep. Okay. Another story on 9/11, if you are interested in that sort of thing. There was just a new study released by engineers from Alaska University. Engineering has just released a study. And I think it was commissioned by engineers for 9/11 Truth. I think they're the ones that paid for it. And Alaska University engineers did the study, and they finally finished their report evaluating World Trade Center 7. And they have concluded, just as I have, and many of you, I'm sure, watching the video here know, if you've seen the video clips and studied the collapse of World Trade Center 7, that they say 100% it did not collapse due to fire. I think we all know that. Finally, I know a lot of us follow what's going on with Brexit and what's going on in the UK. Certainly we have quite a few subs on my channel from the UK that keep us informed. We definitely understand the deep state battle that they're dealing with Brexit, because we're dealing with the same thing here with the Trump coup. And there's a good story in Conservative Treehouse today by Sundance. You may want to take a look at Conservative Treehouse and the Sundance story, where it talks about how Trump has not yet weighed in on the Brexit game. Now, as you know, he sent Mike Pence to London this past week. And if you watch that little presser that he did with, on-camera presser he did with Boris Johnson, Pence made it a point to say, with the cameras rolling, that President Trump and the Trump administration support Brexit. Now, we all know what's gone on over the last couple of days. The Parliament has tried to block Boris Johnson. They've basically passed a resolution that means that there can be no deal Brexit. There must be a deal, knowing good and well that there will never, ever will be a deal because the EU will never agree to any deal that would actually satisfy the people who want a Brexit. So it puts them indefinitely into limbo. But keep in mind, Trump has not yet weighed in and played his card. He is the 1,000-pound troll. And he has a big card to play. And it's the same card he played against China. And it has something to do with putting tariffs on Europe. Tariffs on Europe, with the UK being the beneficiary. Gives him great leverage, gives Boris Johnson great leverage. So there's another card to be played. Trump hasn't weighed in yet. Keep watching, Brexiteers. This thing ain't over yet. See ya. Be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. Bye.